October 14, 1943, Schweinfurt, Germany. Second Lieutenant Robert Johnson levels his P-47 Thunderbolt at 26,000 feet, watching two 91 B-17 Flying Fortresses crawl toward the ball, bearing factories below. His fuel gauge taps empty. In 90 seconds, he'll have to turn back, leaving the bombers defenseless over the most heavily defended target in the REA. The Luftwaffe knows it. 60 Messerschmitt Bf-109s circle like wolves waiting. Johnson keys his radio. "Blue flight turning for home, sorry fellas." His words taste like ash. Below him, those bomber crews, kids from Nebraska and Ohio and Tennessee, are about to face the enemy alone. He banks west, watching his squadron peel away with him. Every fighter escort has hit their maximum range. Not one can stay. The slaughter begins at 14:07 hours. Without fighter protection, the Luftwaffe tears through the bomber formations like chainsaw through silk. B-17 Jersey-bounce jetter explodes in a fireball. 10 men gone in an instant. Satan's Angels spirals earthward, trailing black smoke. Ruthie Sicky breaks apart at the waist, spilling bodies into the frigid air. By sunset, 60 B-17s will be smoking craters in German fields. 600 American airmen dead, captured, or screaming in burning wreckage. The 8th Air Force calls it Black Thursday. Bomber crews call it a death sentence. The survival rate for completing 25 missions has dropped to 31%. A coin flip. Heads you go home, tails you die over Germany. At RAF Highwaycom, General Ecker stares at the casualty reports with shaking hands. In 6 hours, he's lost more bombers and the Luftwaffe lost fighters in a month. The math is brutal, unsustainable. At this rate, the entire 8th Air Force will be wiped out by Christmas. The problem is physics, simple, unforgiving physics. P-47 Thunderbolt's maximum combat radius of 320 miles. P-38 Lightning's 325 miles. The industrial heart of Germany, Berlin, Munich, Schweinfurt, lies 600 miles from England. American fighters can escort the bombers halfway. Then they have to turn back. Then the Germans attack. "We need a fighter that can go all the way to Berlin and back," Ecker tells his staff. "Find me that plane or find me a new strategy, because this one is killing us." What General Ecker didn't know was that the plane already existed. It just had the wrong engine, and one British test pilot was about to break every rule in the book to prove it. Rewind to April 30th, 1942. RAF Duxford, England. The P-51 Mustang sits on the tarmac like a beauty queen at a tractor pull, gorgeous, fast, and completely useless above 15,000 feet. Squadron leader Michael Giddings watches it taxi past his office window and shakes his head. "Lovely aircraft," he mutters to his adjutant. "Lovely, handles like a dream at low altitude, but put her up at 25,000 feet, where the bombers fly. She's a brick with wings." He's not wrong. North American aviation had designed the P-51 in just 117 days, a minor miracle of engineering. The British had ordered 320 of them straight off the drawing board. The Army Air Corps had taken notice and placed their own orders. On paper, it was revolutionary. Laminar flow wings for reduced drag, a huge internal fuel capacity, visibility that put every other fighter to shame. But that engine, the Allison V-1710, was a magnificent engine at sea level. At 15,000 feet, it wheezed like an asthmatic climbing stairs. At 25,000 feet, where German fighters lived, the Mustang couldn't catch a cold. Every RAF squadron that flew them reported the same thing. Brilliant for low-level reconnaissance and ground attack, worthless as a high-altitude escort fighter. So the Mustangs got stuck with the unglamorous jobs: photo reconnaissance, ground strafing, bomber escort until the formation reached Belgium, then turned for home before the real fighting started. The Air Ministry tried everything. They tested different propellers, modified the supercharger, adjusted the fuel mixture. Nothing worked. The Allison engine simply couldn't breathe thin air. At Wright Field in Ohio, procurement officers wrote the Mustang off entirely. Good low-level platform, Red 1 assessment, unsuitable for strategic operations. The USAR ordered 500 Mustangs, not as fighters but as dive bombers, designated A-36 Apaches. That's how little faith they had. By early 1942, the consensus was universal. The P-51 Mustang would never be a high-altitude fighter. Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Hitchcock, a great war pilot working as assistant air attaché in London, wasn't so sure. Hitchcock had seen the Mustang's performance data. That airframe was special. The problem wasn't the plane, it was the power plant. "What if," he wrote in a memo to General Henry Hap Arnold, "we put a better engine in it?" The memo landed with a thud. Arnold had bigger problems. The Air Corps was expanding from 20,000 men to 2.4 million. They were trying to build 50,000 aircraft. Retrofitting an already produced fighter with a different engine, the logistics alone were nightmarish. Different mounting systems, different cooling, different everything. "We don't have time to reinvent the wheel," Arnold's deputy wrote back. The P-47 and P-38 will handle escort duties when they arrive in theater. Focus on what we have, not what we wish we had. Hitchcock kept pushing. The British kept demurring. North American aviation was too busy building more planes to consider major modifications. The engine manufacturers, Allison and Rolls-Royce, were competitors, not collaborators. By April 1942, the idea was dead in the water, except for one man who refused to let it go. Ronald Harker wasn't some pencil pusher in procurement. He was Rolls-Royce's senior liaison test pilot, a man who'd flown everything from Hurricanes to experimental prototypes. He'd heard the whispers about the Mustang. Good bones, wrong engine. He'd seen Hitchcock's memos circulating through Air Ministry channels, and he'd just heard that Rye Duxford had a Mustang available for flight testing. On the morning of April 30th, 1942, Harker drove to Duxford without official orders, without a formal test schedule, without permission from anyone who mattered. He was about to take an unauthorized test flight that would change the course of the war. But first, he needed to convince someone to let him into the cockpit. Ronald William Harker steps out of his staff car at RAF Duxford, carrying a leather flight bag and absolutely no authorization whatsoever. He's 33 years old, thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses that make him look more like an accountant than a test pilot. No combat medals, no flashy credentials, just a Rolls-Royce company badge and a reputation for being annoyingly persistent. The guard at the gate eyes him suspiciously. "Can I help you, sir?" Ronald Harker, Rolls-Royce. "I'm here to fly the Mustang." The guard checks his clipboard, frowns. "I don't see any—" "Squadron Leader Giddings is expecting me," Harker smiles. This is technically true. Giddings knows Harker is coming, he just doesn't know why. Inside the operations hut, Giddings looks up from his morning tea. "Ronnie, what brings you out here?" "I'd like to fly your Mustang." Giddings blinks. "The Mustang? Why on earth would you want to?" "Curiosity. I've heard it's quite something below 15,000 feet. Thought I'd see for myself." Harker sets his flight bag down like the matter's settled. "AG-422 is available?" "Well, yes, but—" Giddings catches himself. "This is a regular— Test pilots don't just show up unannounced. Do you have authorization from the Air Ministry?" "Do I need it?" Harker's smile doesn't waver. "It's a familiarization flight. Your chaps have been flying it for months. I'm simply catching up." Giddings should say no, should pick up the phone and call someone. But Harker has this way about him. Patient, reasonable, like he's already 3 steps ahead of the conversation. And honestly, what's the harm? Let the Rolls-Royce man fly the Allison-powered fighter. Maybe he'll finally understand why everyone says the Mustang is a dead end. "Fine," Giddings sighs, "but don't bend my aircraft." "Wouldn't dream of it, Ronnie." 20 minutes later, Harker straps into Mustang Mark I AG-422. The crew chief runs through the pre-flight checklist. A formality, really. Harker has flown more aircraft types than most men have owned cars, but he listens anyway, nodding at each item. As the Merlin— wait, no, the Allison V-1710 roars to life, Harker's mind is already running calculations. He's not here for a joyride. He's here to answer one specific question. What would happen if you put a Rolls-Royce Merlin 61 engine in this airframe? It's not a new idea. Hitchcock has been hammering on it for months, but nobody's actually done the math. Nobody's looked at the cowling dimensions, the power-to-weight ratios, the mounting configurations. Nobody except Harker, who spent last week sketching modifications on napkins in the Rolls-Royce canteen. He taxis onto the runway, advances the throttle. AG-422 accelerates smoothly, that beautiful laminar flow wing, giving it a grace the blocky P-47 could never match. At 5,000 feet, the Mustang is sublime. Light, responsive, a pilot's dream. At 15,000 feet, it's merely adequate. At 25,000 feet, it's wheezing. Harker levels off at 28,000 feet. The Allison is screaming, temperature gauges climbing into the red. Any Luftwaffe fighter up here would eat this plane alive. But that airframe, that gorgeous, clean, aerodynamic airframe, Harker keys his radio. "Duxford, this is Harker. Request permission to return to base." "Roger, Harker. How'd she handle?" Harker looks at the instruments, at the wing, at the vast blue sky around him. "She's the best fighter I've ever flown, with the wrong bloody engine." He banks west, watching his mind already racing ahead. Tomorrow, he's going to do something that will probably get him fired. May 1st, 1942. Rolls-Royce headquarters, Derby. Harker bursts into Chief Engineer Ronnie Shepard's office without knocking, clutching a sheath of performance data from yesterday's flight. "We need to put a Merlin 61 in the Mustang," he says without preamble. "Today." Shepard looks up from his drawings, expression flat. "Hello to you two, Ronald." "I'm serious. I flew it yesterday at Duxford. That airframe is extraordinary, but the Allison is underpowered at altitude." "Yes, we know." Shepard sets down his pencil. "The Americans know, the RAF knows, everyone knows the Mustang has an engine problem. So let's fix it." "With what authority?" Shepard leans back. "Ronald, we're building Merlins for Spitfires and Lancasters as fast as the factory floor can produce them. The Air Ministry has a production schedule. We can't just one engine." Harker leans across the desk. "Give me one Merlin 61 and I'll show you what that Mustang can do." "And where exactly do you propose we get this engine?" "They're allocated months in advance. Every single one is spoken for." "There's that development prototype on the shelf. The one from the cancelled Wellington project?" Shepard's eyes narrow. "That engine is ministry property. It's being held for evaluation. It's been sitting unused for 3 months. Die because it's awaiting paperwork." Harker cuts him off.
It's waiting for paperwork that will never come because the project was canceled. Give it to me. Let me prove the concept. If I'm wrong, you can file a memo explaining why you wasted one test engine. If I'm right, he lets the sentence hang. Shepard studies him for a long moment. Outside the window, factory workers stream toward the production floor, building engines that will power the aircraft, winning and losing the war. The Merlin 61 with its two-stage supercharger is a game changer at high altitude. Everyone knows it. But putting it in an American fighter nobody has faith in, that's not innovation. That's career suicide. Even if I wanted to help you, Shepard says carefully, modifying the Mustang to accept a Merlin would take months of engineering work. New engine mounts, new cooling systems. The Merlin 61 is larger than the Allison. We'd have to redesign the entire cowling. I've already done the calculations. Harker spreads his napkin sketches across the desk. They're crude, angles and dimensions scribbled in pencil, but thorough. The Merlin 61 will fit, barely. We'll need to modify the radiator intake, but it's doable. Shepard examines the sketches. Against his better judgment, he's impressed.